The time has come to tell my story. My name is Alex, and all you need to know about me is that I've lived and grown up in Philadelphia my entire life. I'm still here, although for the past couple of years, I've wished I weren't. It's nothing against the city or the country, it's just that the weight of what I'm about to share has been a heavy presence for far too long. This isn't something I heard or read on social media. I lived it, and it still haunts me in my dreams, or instead, in my nightmares. I've always had a passion for hiking, and since my college days, I've surrounded myself with friends who share the same interests. Monday through Thursday, we were study machines, but come Friday, we itched to leave the city behind for the trails. The Batona Trail, just a little over an hour west of Philadelphia, became our go-to. It's a fantastic spot for hiking, pretty flat, but that never dulled our enthusiasm for exploration. We typically hiked in packs of 8 or 10. It was common wisdom not to walk there solo. After college, my passion for hiking faded, as did my connection with that circle of friends who gradually drifted apart. Sarah was the exception. We'd meet for meals or movies occasionally, using those moments to catch up and exchange news about the others, most of whom had left Philadelphia. 4 years ago, on Saturday, October 26, 2019, Sarah and I had planned to meet that evening. It had been a few months, 3 or 4, since we'd last seen each other, and our customary reunion was overdue. I remember waking up early that Saturday, eager to run some errands in the morning so my afternoon and evening would be clear. The moment I woke up, I checked social media, and the first thing that caught my eye was about a killer on the run who had murdered his wife and 2 children the previous night. The police were scouring for him. What shocked me was not just the brutality of the act, but that the suspect was a well-known doctor, now a fugitive, with the motive for his heinous crimes remaining in mystery. The next thing I read was equally jarring. Instagram posts from former colleagues broke the news of someone's disappearance, and I found over 20 DMs waiting for me. My Instagram was swamped with pictures of Sarah and her boyfriend, with captions saying that she was last seen on Friday morning heading to the Batona Trail. My heart pounded as I read on. I had spoken to her earlier on Thursday night to confirm our Saturday get-together, yet she hadn't mentioned anything about a hiking trip. Not that she had to, but it was unusual for her. Instinctively, I tried calling her, something that, in hindsight, was a bit foolish. Obviously, her phone was overwhelmed with calls, and unsurprisingly, mine didn't get through either. Then, I went through all the direct messages on Instagram. They were from former classmates, all asking if I had any information. I quickly got dressed and rushed to the nearest police station for any updates on Sarah's disappearance. They informed me she was last spotted on the outskirts of Philadelphia, and a security protocol was in place, monitoring Wharton State Forest, where she and her boyfriend had been missing for less than 2 days. The search hadn't escalated to full scale, but rangers were vigilant. The officer advised me to remain calm, proposing the likelihood that they were just beyond cell service range and not in any immediate danger. In my desperation, I somehow linked Sarah's disappearance to the case of the doctor who had murdered his family, my mind jumping to the conclusion that he might have fled to the Batona Trail. Something told me that this was not a mere coincidence, and that Sarah and her boyfriend might be in serious danger. The officer to whom I relayed this theory seemed to find it overly dramatic. Not wanting to waste time in debate, I returned home, packed a backpack with essentials, and prepared to join the search effort. Despite my disbelief at the unfolding events, I was determined to offer whatever help I could to the search team. After all, my years of hiking the Batona Trail might be helpful. I knew the trail better than anyone. I left for the park around 11 a.m., expecting a 1-hour drive, but traffic slowed me down. Along the way, I tried to answer people who had messaged me about the situation, and even invited some to help search for Sarah, though I doubted they would. By 12:55 p.m., I finally arrived and was greeted by a crowd of rangers at the park entrance. I explained my connection to Sarah and insisted on joining the search. The rangers made it clear they were searching for 2 people who were likely just lost, dehydrated, or disoriented, not victims of any tragedy. I overheard one ranger speculate they might have gotten lost on purpose, something I found ridiculous, knowing Sarah as I did. After adding my name and contact number to the list of authorized searchers, they handed me a radio in case my phone battery died. The guidelines were straightforward. The search was until 6 p.m., after which we would withdraw, as searching in the pitch of the night was not recommended. By the next day, the operation would ramp up, complete with divers ready to scour the swamps surrounding the park. Despite this, the thought of leaving the forest without any sign of Sarah and her boyfriend was unbearable. Secretly, I packed a tent in my backpack along with enough water, food, and all the essentials for at least one night out on the Batona Trail. Before I started venturing down the forest, I paused at the signpost at the park's entrance. Even though I knew the Batona Trail better than anyone, deciding where to start was unexpectedly daunting. To the right lay Ong's Hat, and to the left Apple Pie Hill, the highest point on the trail. Ong's Hat, being a prominent park feature, seemed like an obvious first place for the rangers to check. Yet, I chose to head to Apple Pie Hill, hoping I might uncover some clues from that vantage point. At that moment, I didn't consider what I'd do if I actually encountered the killer. My only tool was a Swiss Army knife, which, realistically, I doubted would be of much help. I checked with the search coordinator and asked him if he didn't think this could be related to the loose killer. He looked at me and replied,
"Son, I think it's more likely that your friends got bitten by a snake or are stranded somewhere. But truthfully, nobody here is looking for a loose killer."
I could even notice a restrained laugh out of respect. He saw my concern and just asked me not to worry, that this is something that happens all the time, and that we were going to find Sarah and her boyfriend without any trouble. Deep down, I was filled with apprehension. The Batona Trail had been our stomping ground for years. It was impossible that Sarah could simply get lost, given all we had explored. Similar to my interaction with the police officer back in Philadelphia, I didn't put much faith in his assurances because I had taken the situation personally, as if the success of the search rested on my shoulders alone. I started my search by making my way towards Apple Pie Hill. I couldn't help but notice how the forest, unlike before, felt denser this time. The humidity was a tangible adversary, and evidence of recent rain was everywhere, with water droplets cradled by the leaves. The branches underfoot were damp and silent, lacking their usual crunch, and the distant sounds of the search squad's radios filtered through the still air. I had decided to turn off my radio from the beginning since I didn't consider it necessary. The walk wasn't very long, or at least it didn't feel like it. Perhaps being on high alert made the time fly by. It must have been about an hour or so when I began to see the abandoned red tower at the top of the hill, which brought many memories from my college years. This led me to check my phone to see if, by any chance, I had a missed call. Maybe Sarah and her boyfriend had appeared, and I was there wasting my time. But that wasn't the case. I tried calling her just to check and immediately got her voicemail telling me that the number was out of service. I checked social media. Some people had responded to me, but I wasn't interested in reading anything, so I put away the phone and set out to climb the tower to the very top. Perhaps from there, I could see something. Climbing the tower stairs, I was hit by a rush of adrenaline, but also a realization of my own lack of cardio. What used to be an easy climb now left me gasping for air. Reaching the top, I paused to survey the once inspiring landscape shrouded in uncertainty. I took a moment to absorb the quiet around me, broken only by the sound of trees rustling in the wind. I was looking for something, a sign of a campsite, searching for life in the forest that didn't offer many answers. I spent some time up there. I checked my phone again and sent a text message to Sarah with some hope of hearing from her. But obviously, I knew that message would not reach her. I turned on the radio again to listen to the rescuers talking. They were reporting from the opposite side of where I was. The leader asked to speed up the search as, at this time of the year, sunset occurred around 5 p.m., and after that, they would call it a day. At that moment, I assumed I would have to spend the night camping. So I decided to go down the tower to look for a good spot to set my camp, doing it while thinking of Sarah, thinking of the area she might choose for her campsite. So I decided to go to a clear site near a stream. The area around the creek was notably swampy. I recalled a few camping trips we had there in the past. I searched for a suitable spot and followed the stream until I stumbled upon the remnants of a campfire. It was clear that people had been there recently. There were footprints in the soil, some human and others from an animal. I couldn't be sure if they were Sarah's and her boyfriend's, or perhaps someone had brought a dog. I searched inside the tent and among the belongings, but didn't find much, just an unloaded shotgun. It caught my attention that the cartridges had been fired and were scattered around the tent, but this was more like a hunting weapon, which was odd because it was prohibited in the area. In a way, it reinforced my theory of the fugitive, murderous doctor. At this point, I wasn't too sure if my life was really in danger, but I grabbed the weapon, loaded it with some remaining cartridges, and kept it by my side. Deep down, I was really convinced that the gun belonged to a hunter who could even help me in the search. Deciding this spot might be a likely return point for them, I set up my tent right next to theirs, with the thought that they could come back to this place. I pitched my tent, gathered wood, and started a fire to cook some food while the sun dipped below the horizon. Yet, as the evening progressed, I was increasingly troubled by the sense that the campsite had been abruptly abandoned. I took the opportunity to turn the radio on again and listen as the rescuers reported back to the entrance. The leader asked for me a couple of times, but I think they eventually assumed that I wouldn't last long in the search and had probably left. After 6 p.m., I received a text message from the leader, briefly telling me that they would resume the search early in the morning and were counting on me. To avoid raising any suspicions, I replied, "Thank you very much. I left early, but we'll see you tomorrow early in the morning." The night settled in, and while searching at night posed its challenges, it was easier to spot a fire or a light in the darkness. I clung to the hope of catching such a sign, a clue that would lead me back to them, because up until then, I felt as though I had just been aimlessly roaming the trails. Around 7:30 p.m., I switched on my flashlight and pulled up the map on my phone, which I'd downloaded beforehand because I knew the park had poor reception. With my phone connected to a portable charger, I headed deeper into the woods. As I walked through the woods, a chill crept over me, despite the warm night. I was guided by the sound of the creek and the moon peeking through the trees, its light almost outshining my flashlight as my guide. I walked by intuition as if my body knew exactly where to look. With my phone in one hand and my flashlight cutting through the darkness in the other, I was determined to find them. I found myself on a marked path, surrounded by a line of trees where the darkness swallowed the path's end. The light allowed me to see up to a certain distance. At that particular moment, I felt that I was being watched. I looked to the sides and only found trees, underbrush, untamed nature, nothing else. I took a few steps while moving my flashlight to the sides, my eyes fixed on a scrap of torn fabric at the base of a tree. From a distance, I studied it, confirming it was indeed cloth. I approached slowly and noticed another part of the garment hooked onto a large branch. It was damp to the touch. Then, out of nowhere, a woman's scream cut through the distance. I recoiled, dropping the fabric, only to see my hand smeared with blood. I raised my head, searching for the source of the scream. I pocketed my phone and tried to light up the area from where the scream came, a scream that echoed once more, now fading into the distance. The first thing that came to mind was to turn on the radio and cry out, "Help! Help!" A few seconds later, I heard a voice coming from the radio saying,
"This is Ranger Josh. Who is this?"
"I'm inside the park by Apple Pie Hill by the creek. I need help, please." Without missing a beat, another voice cut in.
"This is Stones. I'm close by, heading your way now."
The screams persisted, and I quickened my pace. I could hear the screams getting closer, yet bizarrely, the cries shifted from left to right erratically. Confusion gripped me as the sounds tossed back and forth. Nearing the source, I discovered more blood smeared along the path, the spots growing more frequent while the screams sounded without end. Suddenly, Ranger Stones' voice crackled through the radio.
I'm hearing screams, closing in on the location, firing a flare now for visual contact.
Moments later, the night sky blazed a vivid red, and it was as if daylight had come to the woods. Everything was visible. In the distance, I saw the source of the screams and the bloody trail. A creature with wings and a kangaroo-like stance, standing firmly like a gargoyle, its snout-like mouth dripping with blood. Its tail swished as if contentedly feasting. Frozen, I held my breath. The creature glanced my way, and I quickly turned my eyes to what it held in its claws. The victim, or more accurately, what remained of them. It had taken half the neck with a single bite. The face, still recognizable, was Sarah's. Her lifeless form lay silent, and her blood was smeared across the creature's snout. The area was strewn with remnants of a body. It was clear there had been more than one victim. Limbs and torsos lay scattered around the ground. There was no doubt that the other victim had been Sarah's boyfriend. The sight sent a shiver up my spine. I was in the presence of a being whose stories and tales are often told, yet this was real. I was face to face with the Jersey Devil. I shakily aimed my flashlight in its direction as I retreated, which seemed to startle the beast. With a sudden burst, it released what was left of Sarah's body and vanished into the trees. I stood petrified, frozen in the middle of the forest, until I finally heard Ranger Stones in the distance, who was running towards me. Upon arriving at the scene, he stopped instantly, realizing what I had seen was out of the ordinary. The scattered blood and the dismembered bodies that were all over the ground created a grotesque and hellish scene. I had come out alive, but I had witnessed the true devil in person, the Jersey Devil.